Oh no, now I'm too little. What he failed to mention was in the boxing ring, I might look like I can fight, but couldn't. Got my nose broken, got 2 ribs broken, looked really pretty. It's great. Worked really well on the boys, hence I'm still single anyway. Look, I'm going to try and bring this home for you guys, sharing a little bit of lived experience. You know, the last friend that I lost to suicide, he was 38. He was smart and funny and sensitive and the life of the party. And he was a really talented athlete. He was a super successful actor. And from the outside looking in, he had everything. And now he's a statistic, as is his beautiful little daughter that he left behind. And it was a really powerful reminder to me that mental illness, it doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care who you are, it doesn't care what you do, it doesn't care how old you are, or what colour you are, or what race you are, what religion you are, how much money you make, what footy team you support, how many followers you have on Instagram. And there is no good or right or easy time to talk about mental illness or suicide. It was a shitty time yesterday, it's a shitty time today, and it's not going to be a better or easier or the right time tomorrow. But we have to start getting more comfortable and confident having these uncomfortable and often really confronting conversations if we have any chance of attacking the statistics that surround mental illness and suicide in this country, because let me tell you, they are terrifying. Last year, I spent a month in the mines as an ambassador for the mental health charity Live In, and I was chatting to the boys every day. And I was privy to some really eye-opening conversations, some really humbling conversations. Conversations about these guys' mental health that they had never, ever had before. And one of these conversations really stuck with me. It was after I delivered a presentation in the wet mess, because what better time to talk about sobriety and self-care and mental health than while everyone else was getting pissed. And afterwards, this elderly gentleman came up to me, would have been late 50s, ex-military contractor, and he started telling me the story of the 9 friends that he had lost to suicide. And my first thought was like, Jesus, do I even have 9 friends? And then he finished the story by telling me of the 3 times that he had tried to take his own life. He said, I just feel like I have no purpose. And I took a moment and I looked at him and I said, what if your purpose was to share your story so that some other young kid out there who could be really struggling right now, what if by telling him your story, you could potentially save his life? Would that be a pretty cool purpose? Everybody has a story. It might not be your own personal story, it might be the story of a close friend, or it might be the story of a friend, but everybody has a story. And if there is one thing that I have learned in the 5.5 years that I've been an ambassador for Live In, it's that sometimes something as simple as sharing your own story can be the one thing that somebody else needs to hear in order to have a conversation about their own. If you'd asked me about my life and what I did a couple of years back, I would have told you about my job as a PT or a strength coach. A job that I loved, but a job nonetheless, something that paid the bills. If you ask me about what I do now, what my life is about now, I'll tell you about my purpose. And that's the story I'm going to share with you now. Because while I searched for a purpose for near 38 years, I didn't find it until 2017. I didn't find it until I died. So when I was 15, 2 major things happened. And it wasn't boobs, much to my utter dismay. The first one was that I was being bullied at school for being too skinny. My nickname, believe it or not, at school was Alexa Anorexia. If only those haters could see me flex now. The next thing that happened, and probably the thing that really turned my life upside down, was that my mum was diagnosed with manic depression, bipolar. And back in those days, there was absolutely no awareness around mental illness or suicide at all. And overnight, my life completely changed. My mum was a completely different person, a stranger. My dad didn't know who she was. I didn't know who she was. Half the time, my mum didn't even know who she was, like literally. And I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know who to say it to. I didn't know if there was an appropriate time or place to say anything. So I said nothing at all. And if you ask me what my dad thought about the situation, I've absolutely no idea, because not once did we have a conversation about it. When I was 17 and 2 weeks before my university entrance exams, my mum tried to take her life, and I intervened. I walked in. And honestly, it was probably the most heartbreaking day of my life, because up until then, I knew that we were struggling. I knew that I was struggling, and I knew that she was struggling, but I had no idea that she was at a point where she felt like that was her only option. And I truly believe that if we had the resources and the networks and the support and the education and awareness that we have now, while it wouldn't have changed her diagnosis, it would absolutely have changed the way that I handled the situation, the way that we handled the situation as a family, and it would have better enabled me to give her the love and the support that she truly deserved. Following my mum's suicide attempt, our lives were completely medicated. So my mum was put on this cocktail of antipsychotics and steroids. My dad self-medicated with a bottle of whiskey, sometimes 2 a day. And I went to the gym. The gym for me was my safe place. It was my sanctuary. Training became my therapy. It was the first place I felt connected. It was the first place I felt like I had any control over my life. It was the first place I felt empowered. And it was the first time and place that I truly began to understand the connection between what it was like to feel physically strong and how that translated mentally. And I truly believe that when you develop physical strength, you develop mental toughness. With mental toughness comes resilience. When you're resilient, you're more likely to cultivate a more positive mindset. And when you have a more positive mindset, you are far better equipped to not only handle everything that life throws at you on a daily basis, but you're much better equipped to help support and lift up and empower and inspire everybody else around you. My dad was a functioning alcoholic before he was just a plain old messy alcoholic, before he died of liver cirrhosis as a direct consequence of being an alcoholic. And I still remember vividly the day that I truly understood that I couldn't save him. I couldn't guilt him out of the addiction, and I couldn't love him out of the addiction. And we had just had this massive argument because he'd been drinking all day and he wanted me to drive him to the alcohol store to get more. And I flat out refused because I thought in my head, if I did that, I was an enabler. And I didn't want to be an enabler. And he was like, well, if you don't drive me, I'm just going to drive myself. He was drunk. I remember crying and screaming at him. Didn't he understand he was killing himself? Didn't he understand that he was never going to walk me down the aisle or give me away at a wedding or give a father's speech or see any grandkids? And he just turned to me and he says, Alexa, I wish I could tell you I loved you enough to stop, but I can't. They say that the opposite of addiction, it's not sobriety, it's connection. I found my first sense of connection when I found the gym, but I found my second sense of connection when I found my dad's whiskey bottle. I was 15 when I drank my first full hip flask of rum, and I made myself so sick that I could never drink rum again. At 17, I went to the pre-drinks for my school ball, and I got so drunk I didn't even make it to the ball. I had to be taken home, where I consequently lied to my parents and told them my drink had been spiked because I was terrified of what they were going to do. For my 21st birthday, I drank 21 tequila shots in a row. I went and threw up, came back, sat under the bar, swayed for a bit before sneaking out of my own birthday party to go upstairs to where the Auckland Blues were having their end-of-year rugby function and sneaking in there by telling them I was a cheerleader. So drunk, one of the cheerleaders had to take me home. When I was 24, one of my best friend's boyfriends, who happens to be the partner of Jacinda Ardern, by the way, he doesn't know this story, came up to me and said, Alexa, your friends would do anything for you, but you make it really hard to love you when you're drunk. When I was 25, I thought it was a really good idea to leave my friends at the bar and go and have shots with some guys I didn't even know. Only to wake up in the back of a stranger's car with him telling me he'd rescued me from the side of a bush where two guys were trying to drag me into. And when I was 26, I was in a cab on my way home and I was so drunk when I got out of the cab, I got out, I fell over, I smacked my head on the curb, knocked myself out, and two passers-by called an ambulance and I woke up in hospital on a drip. And still, it would take me 3 more years and the death of my father to make me understand that I had to stop. I flew from Hong Kong to New Zealand for his funeral. I drank his last bottle of whiskey, as you do. I danced on those tables. I fell off those tables. I threw up on myself. I fell in a ditch and I missed my flight home. And in the morning, I woke up and I turned to my partner and I said, I am never drinking again. Sound familiar? Yep. He looks at me, rolls his eyes and says, until next weekend, right? I flew back to Hong Kong and I have never touched a drop of alcohol since. That was 12 years ago. Sobriety was the best yet hardest decision I have ever made. The best because for once I gave myself the opportunity to find out who I really was without the crutch. But the hardest because, for lack of a better term, it was pretty much social suicide overnight. I lost entire groups of friends because I was no longer the fun one. And it was the beginning of the end of my relationship, because what did you do if you didn't party in the weekend? What else did you have in common? It is amazing to me how confrontational the decisions you make about your own life can be for the people around you when they feel like you are indirectly challenging their own lifestyle choices. My friends these days, completely different ballgame. Uber Alexa is the best designated driver around, and they are at that bar getting me a soft drink or a glass of water before I've even had to ask. Here's the thing. Everybody faces adversity. Everybody goes through tough times. You've probably been through something already. You might be sitting here going through something right now, and chances are you're going to go through something again in the future. Life is not all fucking sunshine and roses. I'm sorry, you can't bleep that out. Jesus. But it's not. And it's okay not to be okay. It's okay to have a shitty day. But you don't want that shitty day to turn into a shitty week and into a shitty month and then into a shitty life. Your adversity does not define you. It is not who you are, but it's the decisions that you make in those moments of adversity that can define you. 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with degenerative osteoarthritis in my left hip. So essentially all that meant is at the grand old age of 37, I had the hip of a 65-year-old. Not something you expect to hear. I was isolated. No longer did I feel physically strong, so who was I? I was in so much pain that I couldn't even get out of bed in the morning. I had to pull my leg up because it wouldn't work. I couldn't walk across a room unassisted. I couldn't put my pants on after the shower because I couldn't stand on one leg. Do you know how frustrating that is? And when I went into the gym to train my clients, I had to sit in a box in the corner with my crutches and yell at them across the room because that was all I could do. Any of you guys like running? Yeah, a few people? My God, I hate it. You guys are crazy. But do you know what the one thing that I wanted to be able to do while I sat in that box in the corner was? I wanted to be able to run because I couldn't do it. And it's incredible how many simple things we take for granted every single day until those things that we are granted are taken away from us and we can no longer do them anymore. I saw 5 orthopedic surgeons, all who said the same thing. You have to get a full hip replacement or you're not going to walk again. I was like, cool, sweet, I'm an athlete, I've got this. I'm going to go into hospital, I'm going to get my new hip replacement, I'm going to nail my rehab, and I'm going to come out like literally bionic woman. But shit never goes to plan, does it? On August the 12th, 2017, I was admitted into St. Vincent's private hospital to get my full hip replacement at 8 a.m. in the morning. At 12 p.m., I woke up in ICU on a breathing tube, unable to breathe by myself, with 3 of my best mates standing over my hospital bed crying because they thought I'd died. Turns out I had. I'd had an anaphylactic reaction to my antibiotics in the operating theatre. I'd flatlined and I had to be resuscitated 4 times. If you're going to do something, do it really freaking well. Now, there was no white light or conversation with Jesus, although one of my friends was actually recording the whole process via Instagram, so I had 137 messages asking me those exact questions. But what there was this absolute moment of clarity around the type of person I wanted to be and the type of energy I wanted to bring to the people and places around me. And this had everything to do with the last thing that I had done before surgery, and that was deliver a mental health presentation at a school in Townsville. And Townsville has one of the highest suicide rates in Australia. It's a military-affiliated school, and one of the students that I spoke to had lost 3 people in the space of a year to suicide. Her father, her uncle, and her best mate. It was heartbreaking. And as I was delivering the presentation and sharing my story, I was watching this young girl on the front row, head in her hands, bawling her eyes out, and I was thinking, Jesus, I've really triggered her. Like, I've got to be really careful here. I could be in some trouble. And I kept my eye on her the whole time. And at the end of the presentation, she waited, and she came up, and she gave me the most beautiful hug. And she said, thank you. Today you saved my life. Today was going to be the day that I killed myself. But listening to you share your story has made me realize that I'm not alone, and I'm going to ask for help. And I remember just standing there, mind blown, going, holy shit, what just happened? I had no idea that something as simple as sharing my own story could have such a profound impact on somebody else's life. But that was the first thing that I remembered when I woke up in ICU. That moment and that conversation, I was like, man, I want more of those moments and more of those conversations. Because here's the thing, guys, and this is what I really want you to take away from this, if nothing else. Every single day, every single one of you, in every single interaction that you have, you absolutely have the power to make somebody's day, change somebody's life, or potentially even save it. And I could not think of a more powerful or extraordinary gift to have than that. I really hope that you choose to use it. So thank you so much for your time tonight. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting everyone that stepped on stage. You know what? Let's go and inspire more people to have more conversations that could save more lives. Thank you.